6 days before she married another man, my best friend stood in my living room holding a folded index card and asked me to pretend to be her groom. Not for a joke, not for a photo. She wanted to say her wedding vows out loud to someone before she said them for real. And I was the only person she trusted to hear them first. I said yes before I understood what I was agreeing to. By the third rehearsal, she had started looking at me the way you're supposed to look at the person you're marrying. And I had started forgetting he existed at all. My name is Elliot Shaw. I was 31 that autumn, working as a cabinet maker in a small shop off Route 9 in Corville. The kind of town where the same 4 last names show up on the fire department roster and the diner menu hasn't changed since before I was born. I build things that are supposed to last: dovetail joints, mortise, and tenon. The sort of work where if you rush it, the whole piece tells on you a year later. I mention this because it's relevant. I spent my whole life being careful with materials and careless with the one thing I should have measured twice. The person in the living room was Nora Bellamy. She was 30, a music teacher at the elementary school 2 blocks from the shop. And I had known her since we were 19. When we both worked a summer at the same hardware store, and she reorganized the entire fastener aisle by color because she said the numbers were emotionally illegible. We had been best friends for 11 years. Not the kind of friendship people are secretly waiting to escalate, or that's what I told myself. The kind where she had a key to my place for the plants, and I had a key to hers for the cat. And we could sit in the same room for 2 hours barely talking and call it a good night. Here is the part I never said out loud to anyone, including myself, until it was almost too late to matter. Somewhere around year 4, I did the math. I sat at my workbench one ordinary Tuesday and realized that if you added up all the hours I'd spent genuinely happy in my life, most of them had Nora in the frame. And instead of doing anything about it, I filed it away like a receipt I might need someday. In a drawer in my chest I kept telling myself was locked. I had reasons, good ones I thought. She was my best friend, and I had watched enough people torch a friendship trying to upgrade it. I'd rather have her forever at arm's length than for 18 months up close. So I kept the drawer shut. For 7 years I kept it shut. I got very good at it. I want to be honest that being good at ignoring something is not the same as being right to. Then she met Grant. I need to be fair about Grant because the easy version of this story makes him a villain. And he wasn't one. Grant Merritt was a physical therapist who moved to Corville to be closer to his parents. He was patient in a way I wasn't. He remembered people's surgeries and asked about them. He learned the names of Nora's students. When her car died in February, he was the one who drove 90 minutes each way to get the part. And he didn't tell her he'd done it. I only knew because I'd offered first and she'd said Grant already had it handled. He loved her in a steady, unglamorous, show-up-on-time way, and she had every reason in the world to marry him. I have thought a great deal about how much simpler this would be if he'd been cruel. He wasn't. He was just a good man standing exactly where I should have been standing years earlier. And the only thing he'd done wrong was arrive on time when I hadn't. They got engaged in June. Nora told me at the diner over the same booth we'd sat in 100 times, and I said, "Congratulations." And I meant it in the top layer of myself and did not investigate the layers underneath. I agreed to be at the wedding. I did not agree to be in it. She offered me a role and I made a joke about not fitting in the suit. And she let it go because 11 years teaches you when someone is asking you not to push. What I didn't understand then was that she'd noticed something in me she hadn't named either. And she was being as careful with me as I was being with her. The vows thing started on a Wednesday. She came by the shop after school, still smelling faintly of the lavender hand lotion she'd used since she was 22. A smell that to this day undoes me in grocery stores. She had that particular tightness around her eyes she got when she'd been holding something all day. I turned off the planer. The shop went quiet in that ringing way it does after a machine stops. "I need a favor," she said, "and it's weird and you're allowed to say no." "Those are my 3 favorite conditions." She didn't laugh, which told me it was serious. "I have to write my own vows. Grant wants us to write our own. And every time I try to say them out loud in the mirror, I sound like a greeting card. Or I cry. Or I sound like I'm apologizing for something." She pulled a folded index card out of her coat pocket and held it like it might bite her. "I need to practice saying them to an actual person, a real face. And I can't do it in front of him, obviously. And I can't do it in front of my mother, because she'll cry and then I'll cry. And she stopped. You're the only person I can be stupid in front of. I should have said, find a bridesmaid. I should have said, record yourself on your phone. There were 100 safe exits and I took none of them. Because she was standing in my shop asking me to be the safe person. And being the safe person for Nora was the closest thing to a religion I had. Okay, I said. Okay? You practice. I'll stand there. I'll be a wall with opinions. The relief that went across her face was so complete, it almost hurt to watch. You have to actually be him, though. You can't just be you nodding. I need to know it works on a person she searched for it. Facing me and meaning it. Otherwise, it's just a mirror with a beard. I'll try to radiate groom energy. Please don't say that at the wedding. That first afternoon we did it once. She stood by the window where the light was decent, and I stood 4 feet away in my apron with sawdust on my forearms. And she read the vows off the card in a flat, embarrassed rush like ripping off a bandage. They were fine. They were true things about Grant, that he was steady. That he made her feel like she didn't have to perform. That he'd driven 90 minutes for a car part and never mentioned it. When she finished, she looked up at me mortified and said, well, and I made my first mistake. Which was to tell her the truth as a craftsman instead of as a man protecting himself. You're reading a list of his qualities, I said. It sounds like a recommendation letter. You're telling him what he is. You're not telling him what he does to you. She stared at me. That's annoyingly good. I fix things for a living. You fix cabinets. Structurally, a vow and a drawer are the same problem. It has to hold weight without you seeing how. She wrote that down on the back of the card. I watched her do it. I want you to remember that she wrote it on the back of the card. Because that back of the card becomes the whole story. She came back Thursday, then Friday. It became a thing without either of us deciding it was a thing. Which is how the most dangerous things always start. Each afternoon she'd arrive after school and we'd stand a little closer than 4 feet and she'd say the vows. And I'd tell her where they held and where they didn't. And here is what I didn't understand was happening. What I only understood much later. Taking the whole week apart in my head, the way you take apart a joint that failed to see where the glue starved. Every day the vows got better. And every day they got a little less specific to Grant. The first draft was full of his name. By Friday she'd stopped using it. She said you instead. Which made sense. You don't say your groom's name in your vows, you say you. You're looking right at him. That's how I explained it to myself. But she was looking right at me. And the you was landing on me. And I was standing there in my sawdust, letting a woman rehearse the most intimate words she would ever say. Aiming them at my face and telling myself I was being a good friend by helping her aim them well. On Friday, she got to a line and stopped cold. What? I said. Nothing. It's stupid. Read it. She looked at the card. Then she looked at me. And something moved behind her eyes that I had spent 7 years pretending I couldn't see. You make me feel like the version of myself I like best, she read. The one who isn't managing anything. I didn't know I was allowed to just be that with somebody, until you. She stopped. The room did that ringing quiet thing again, except no machine had been running. Is that too much? No, I said, and my voice came out wrong. That one's true. How do you know it's true? It was a fair question, and it was a trap, and we both knew it the second it was in the air. Because the honest answer was, because it's true when you say it to me, I didn't say that. I'm not proud of what I said instead, which was nothing. I just held her eyes a beat too long and she held mine. And then she looked down at the card and said, I should go. I have to. Grant's making dinner. And she left with her coat half on. And I stood in my empty shop for 20 minutes, not building anything. That night I didn't sleep. I lay there and I did the thing I'd sworn I'd never do, which was open the drawer. All the way. And what was in it wasn't a surprise, that was the terrible part. It had been in there for 7 years, neatly folded, waiting. I loved her. Not the friendship version I'd let myself have. The whole thing. The version that noticed she smelled like lavender and remembered the exact sound of her laugh when it caught her off guard and would have driven 300 miles for a car part and never mentioned it. Grant hadn't stolen anything from me. I'd left it on the counter for 7 years and he'd simply been the one to pick it up. Here's the reframe I came to at about 4 in the morning, the one that changed what I did next. I had spent all week thinking the danger was that I might tell her how I felt. That wasn't the danger. The danger was that I might tell her now 6 days before her wedding, when she was scared and raw and rehearsing her heart open in my shop. And she might mistake the intensity of the moment for an answer. Grief isn't the same as marriage, and a wedding week panic isn't the same as love. If I said it now, I'd never know if she chose me or just chose the exit I happened to be standing in. And she'd never know either. I'd be handing her the worst gift disguised as the most romantic one. A decision she didn't get to make clearly. So I decided the thing I'm still not sure was brave or just cowardly wearing Brave's coat. I decided to help her finish the vows. Well, so she'd walk down that aisle, sure. And to say nothing, she came Saturday, 2 days before the wedding. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Last one, she said. I think it's done. I just need to hear it once all the way through out loud at a person. And then I'll stop bothering you. You've never bothered me. I've bothered you for 11 years. You've occupied me. Different thing. She almost smiled. Then she squared up 4 feet away in the window light and she read the whole thing, start to finish. The way she'd say it at the altar. And it was good. It was really good. It had everything I'd taught her, the specifics the weight held without showing the joinery. The line about being the version of herself she liked best. She said it all to me, looking right at me. And I stood there and took it like a man standing in the rain he chose not to come in out of. When she finished, there was a long silence. That's the one, I said. Don't touch it, it's finished. She didn't move. She was still looking at me and her eyes were bright. And her hand had come up to the collar of her coat the way it did when she was about to say something she'd regret. Elliot. Say it at the altar exactly like that and there won't be a dry eye, Elliot. Sharper. Who was I saying it to just now? The question landed in the middle of the room like something dropped from a height. I understood in that second that she'd known before I had, that maybe she'd known all week, that maybe the vows had been a question she was asking me the only way she knew how. And I'd been answering it every day by fixing them instead of stopping them. I had a choice. I could feel exactly where it split. You were saying it to Grant, I said, steady, kind. You were practicing, and it's perfect. And he's going to hear it in 2 days and know exactly how lucky he is. Something in her face broke a little. Not because I'd said the wrong thing. Because I'd said the responsible thing and she'd wanted me to say the reckless one. And we both knew I'd chosen on purpose. That's not an answer, she said quietly. It's the only one that's fair to you. Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't you dare do the noble thing where you protect me from what I'm feeling. I'm 30 years old. I know what I felt standing here saying those words. I want you to tell me if I'm the only one who felt it. Or if I'm about to marry a good man while She stopped, breathed. While the person I actually can't stop looking at stands 4 feet away letting me. So there it was. On the table. The thing I'd kept in the drawer for 7 years. And she'd had one in her chest the whole time too. And neither of us had opened ours because we'd both been protecting the same friendship from the same fear. And here's the moral maturity turn. The thing I did that I will stand by even on the nights I hate it. I told her the truth, all of it. But I didn't hand it to her as a rescue. You're not the only one, I said. My voice was not steady anymore. I've felt it for 7 years. I did the math when we were 27 and I put it in a drawer because I would rather have had you as my best friend for the rest of my life than risk you for 18 good months. That was a coward's math and I know it now. So, no, you're not imagining it. You never were. She took a step toward me. I put my hand up not to push her away, just to hold the moment still. But I'm not going to let you choose me at 4 a.m. of your wedding week, I said. Because if you leave Grant, it can't be because I stood in a window and let you aim your vows at me. It has to be because you woke up on an ordinary Tuesday and knew Grant is a good man. He drove 90 minutes for your car and didn't tell you. He deserves to marry someone who's sure. And you deserve to be sure, and you can't be sure standing here right now. Because right now is a panic and a deadline and a man who's finally saying the thing 7 years too late. She was crying now. So what am I supposed to do? Go home, I said, and it cost me everything I had. Say nothing to me for 2 days. And if you get to that altar and you're sure, really sure, ordinary Tuesday, sure you marry him and I will stand up and be happy for you and I will never say another word about this as long as I live. And if you're not, I stopped. I made myself say it clean. If you're not, you don't need me to catch you. You just need to not marry someone you're not sure of. That's true whether I exist or not. That's the most unromantic thing anyone's ever said to me. I know. It's also, she wiped her face with the heel of her hand, the most anyone's ever trusted me to decide something. She left. She took the card with her. I watched her taillights go down Route 9 and I went into the shop and I built a jewelry box for no one until 3 in the morning. Dovetails so tight you couldn't have slid a hair into the seams. Because it was the only way I knew to hold myself together. I didn't hear from her Sunday. That was the deal. It was the longest day of my life. I checked my phone so many times I wore a smudge into the screen. Nothing. I told myself nothing meant she was sure, and I made myself glad about it. And I was maybe 40% successful. The wedding was Monday afternoon, which is an odd day for a wedding. But the church was only free Mondays that autumn, and Nora had never cared what day anything was on. I put on the suit I'd claimed wouldn't fit. It fit. I sat in the 4th row on the groom's side because I was Grant's friend too by then. And Grant found me before the ceremony and shook my hand and thanked me. Thanked me for helping Nora with the vows. Because she'd told him I'd helped her get them right and he had no idea none. And I have never in my life felt smaller or more like I'd built something that was going to fail its load test in front of a full room. The music started, everyone stood, and I stood too. And I looked at the back of that church the way you look at a joint you're not sure will hold. Nora came down the aisle on her father's arm in a dress the color of unfinished maple. And she was looking straight ahead, and she was beautiful. And she got to the front and handed her flowers to her sister and turned to face Grant. The officiant said the words, they got to the vows. Grant went first, and his were good, plain, and true, and full of her name. The way I'd told her not to do it, and it worked anyway, because he meant every syllable. And I sat there and thought, marry him, he's good, be sure. Then it was her turn. She unfolded the card. My handwriting was on the back of it. The note I'd told her to write on Wednesday, it has to hold weight without you seeing how. She looked at the front, and she looked at Grant. And she stood there for a long, long moment, longer than a person stands when they're just gathering themselves. Long enough that the room started to feel it. Long enough that Grant's smile tightened at the edges. And then Nora Bellamy did the bravest thing I have ever watched anyone do. She closed the card. I can't, she said, not to me, to Grant. Quietly only for him, though the whole church heard it in the silence. I practiced these until they were perfect. And they're beautiful. And somewhere this week, I realized I wasn't practicing them for you. And you are too good a man to marry a woman who isn't sure. You drove 90 minutes for my car and never told me. You deserve someone whose whole heart shows up on an ordinary Tuesday. And mine, her voice broke. Mine has been somewhere else for a long time. And I was too scared to look at it, and I am so sorry. And I would rather humiliate us both right now than lie to you for the rest of your life. I did not move. I want to be clear about that. I did not stand up. I did not go to her. I did not so much as breathe loudly. Because this was the whole point. This was the thing I'd protected. She wasn't choosing an exit I was standing in. I was in the 4th row, silent, useless, exactly where I'd promised to be. She was choosing on an ordinary Monday in front of everyone with nothing to catch her. She was just refusing to marry someone she wasn't sure of. That was true whether I existed or not. Grant looked at her for a long moment. Then, and this is why I could never hate him, he took her hand. And he said something too soft to hear, and she nodded, and he kissed her on the forehead. And he let go. He walked back up the aisle with his shoulders straight and his face wrecked, and he was gone. And I hope wherever he is now, he found someone who shows up whole on ordinary Tuesdays. Because he was owed that and more. Nora stood alone at the front of a church full of people, and she did not look for me. That's the part I hold on to. She didn't scan the pews for the man who'd let her aim her vows at his face. She just stood there in the ruins of the day she'd planned on her own 2 feet, having chosen honesty over the aisle. And only after a long while after her sister had come and put an arm around her. After the church had started its stunned exhale, only then did she find me in the 4th row. I didn't smile. I didn't do anything a decent man wouldn't do at a wedding that had just come apart. I just held her eyes the way I had in the shop. Except this time I let her see all of it, the whole drawer open. We didn't speak that day. Or the next. She had a life to dismantle, and I had no right to be anywhere near the wreckage of it. I sent her one text on Tuesday: when you're ready, no clock. Ordinary Tuesdays only. She didn't reply for 11 days, which was the exact number of years we'd been friends. And I don't think that was an accident. On the 12th day, she walked into the shop after school smelling like lavender, holding the index card. She set it on my workbench face down so my handwriting showed. It has to hold weight without you seeing how. I've been thinking about what I'm sure of, she said. On ordinary days, not panic days, not deadline days. Just regular ones where nothing's happening and I'm grading spelling tests and I catch myself wanting to tell you something. And it's always been you. Even when I was practicing marrying someone else, it was you. That's the part I couldn't forgive myself for until I realized you'd known it too. And you still made me choose it clean. She put her hand flat on the card. You could have had me that Saturday. I'd have left with you that night. You knew that. I knew that. Why didn't you? Because I didn't want you the way you'd have come to me that night, I said. Scared and cornered and grabbing the nearest door. I wanted you the way you just walked in, on a Tuesday. Sure. She came around the bench. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she picked up the card, turned it over to the front where her vows were. And she read them to me, the real ones, the finished ones, the ones I'd told her were done. And this time when she got to the line about being the version of herself she liked best, the one who wasn't managing anything until she didn't have to aim it. It was already pointed the right way. It had been the whole time. I'd just been too careful to admit I was the target. We got married the following autumn on a Tuesday because of course we did. Small. No church we couldn't book, no vows either of us had to rehearse. Because we'd already said the truest ones across a workbench with sawdust on the floor. Grant sent a card. I won't tell you what it said because some decency belongs only to the man who showed it. But I will tell you I keep it in a drawer in the shop. A drawer I no longer keep locked as a reminder that being a good man means sometimes letting go of the thing you drove 90 minutes for. I still have the index card. My handwriting on the back, her vows on the front. It sits in that jewelry box I built at 3 in the morning. The one with the dovetails so tight you can't slide a hair into them. I built it for no one that night. Turns out I built it for her. For 7 years, I believed the careful thing was the kind thing. That if I never reached for what I wanted, I could never break it. Nora taught me that a drawer you keep locked doesn't protect what's inside it. It just makes sure no one, including you, ever gets to hold it. The bravest thing isn't the grand gesture at the altar. It's being willing to stand 4 feet away, say the true thing plainly, and then trust the other person to choose it on an ordinary day with no music, no deadline, and no one waiting to catch them. She chose it, on a Tuesday. That's the only kind of sure I'd ever have wanted. So here's what I keep asking myself, and I'll ask you too. If the person you'd quietly loved for years asked you to help them rehearse their vows for someone else, would you have fixed the words and stayed silent? Like I almost did forever. Or would you have told them the truth, knowing it might cost you the friendship either way? And how do you know the difference between protecting someone and just protecting yourself? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. If this one sat with you, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.